Frontline with Courtney Kenny, and I'm Tom Parisi, and today we got a great set of guests. It's episode, who knows at this point, of the Frontline podcast. I'm Tom Parisi's Courtney Kenny, and back to join us for the second tour, at least with me and many more in between. The legendary and most humble man you could think of is Bob Coles, and just as equally legendary and humble about it, Matt Sookram joins us again on the front line. Gentlemen, it's good to see you. Good to have you back. We've got hockey just around the corner, and man, it's so close you can taste it. How amped up are you guys?
Well, I just want to see a rink.
Yeah, that's the inside rink not being vaccinated would be nice.
Just a rink. I'll settle for that in the next few days, just to watch players skate around the rink. It's been a while.
That it has.
That was going to be my answer. Be in a rink that doesn't have chairs set up to get a vaccination. So that was so surreal to think that the last time I was in that building at Memorial Gardens was just another game in a season that a lot of people were going, yeah, we could get to the end of the year now. And then the next time you're in that rink, you're like, okay, there's no ice and I'm about to get jabbed with a needle. Fun times.
Yeah, isn't it though? Like, it's so crazy. I'm sitting there in like the waiting area at the end of it in the 15 minutes, and I'm like, wow, this is where the blue line would be right about now.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, surreal for sure.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I'm kind of tentative like about the whole entire thing. Like, I still feel like it's not real. It's not happening next week until I actually walk in there and see the ice in front of me, you know? So I'm pretty excited. I
don't blame you for feeling that way, considering how last year went with a lot of unknowns.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that there's been a lot of regulations put in place to make sure that we can have a hockey season this year.
I think the worst part about last year was just the tease, right?
Yeah.
Just knowing, oh, you'll get in 48 games, 36, 24 even. And then nothing, which, I mean, I'm pretty sure we all saw coming, but still, it broke my heart anyway to have it happen.
Absolutely.
Well, not only that, they started to show signs the year before. I remember going into those last, 3 weeks of the regular season, and, the buzz around the community was, well, they're not going to make the playoffs, but you talk to the coaches and the players of that team, they were playing a lot better than they were earlier, and they were starting to win some big games, get a little more respect. So, and then not to have that anticipation of last season, was hard on everybody, and I'm sure they're ready to go. I mean, these players who have been sitting around for a couple of years, they get drafted and they haven't played, and now you got the new guys coming in that they just drafted, and it's going to look like a completely different hockey team, but it's going to be, I think, a very competitive training camp because you've missed a training camp, you've missed a season, and these players have to, get off the bus and start proving to the coaches that, they deserve to make that opening night roster.
I think it's going to feel a lot like that first training camp when the team first came, where no one really knew any of the players really, you'd heard some of their names and stuff prior, but there's just so much turnover. Like, we had Coach Houlihan on who says, normally you get, a couple of rookies and stuff, but they got a double cohort this year, so it's going to be, even for us, like sitting here, like, yeah, we know the names, but we don't know the players until we see them in front of us.
I also think it's interesting that your third year guys this year, the ones that can really make or break your season, depending on how loaded you are with older guys, how much younger guys you're giving playing time to, that third year middle core is usually what can make or break your season. And that third year middle core literally has less than an actual full OHL season under their belt.
Yeah.
Right. That's going to be, I mean, it's not just the battalion that have to deal with it, but that's going to be interesting to see are there guys from last year's draft and this year's draft that now catapult those third year guys, because coaches want to see the potential of guys that are going to be here for 3 or 4 more years versus guys that might only be here for another 2.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Bob.
think of a kid, sorry, Tom, a kid like Liam Arnsby. I mean, he's played one OHL season, and he's one of those guys, the Christopoulos brothers. I mean, they showed a lot of promise in that initial year, but I think for them, it has to be more than promise this year. I mean, they're going to be expected to lead this team, and you got the Owen Outwaters, Ty Nelson, huge year for Joe Verbetic. I mean, down that roster, there are so many guys that need really good seasons to get their careers off to not a good start, really a great start.
Gentlemen, I believe it was before the pandemic had started. There were websites, pundits, people like us who were saying, like, watch out for these Battalion. On top of, what they're just drafted and who's coming up, people were like chomping at the bit, like they wish they had these prospects. They wish they had this core of players. And I'm asking you both, even you, Courtney, do you think that puts any expectation on him this year? Because there was not supposed to be much of any expectations for this team, but now, is there some?
I think there is, because I think there's way more of a sense of urgency again for those third year guys who are going into their NHL draft years now with only 60 games under their belt, or 62 games under their belt of OHL experience. So I think there will be that sense of urgency from that class. For, I think, the first year guys, because there's going to be such a big group of guys that are technically rookies. I think the expectation is that they have a lot to prove because they are coming off their draft years. And as we all know, every time you have that rookie class come in there is that expectation that they are here for a reason and they want to stay here for a reason. So I do think that there is, I don't know if it's a weighted expectation in terms of what the team thinks it can accomplish in the win and loss record, but I think individually there's a lot of urgency for these players.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I do think that we're going to see some growing pains, of course, because what rookies go into a league without growing pains? I mean, you even see it, and I know it's a completely different sport, but I know we've talked about it, at least, Matt, where we talk about Vladdy and Bo with the Jays, how they're kind of going through some growing pains right now at the major league level. They haven't played a full season. So we're going to see that with, these guys that have great talent like Wakely and Nelson and all those guys, but there's going to come a point where maybe some other teams start to catch up with these guys and figure out what they're about, and they have to change their game plan that they haven't had to before, type of thing. But I do think that there is an expectation on this team compared to years prior where we just went into the season like, maybe 8th or 7th place would be great. But I think you could see the team compete for at least conservatively the 4th spot in the Eastern Conference.
I think people got to be patient too, guys, because I mean, you mentioned the Jays example. Hockey is such a team sport that it's chemistry, finding the right lines, finding the right combinations on the defense pairs, goal. I mean, hockey is so complicated that way that it doesn't take the coach's time to say, okay, and you've got to do trial and error. You've got to try different lines together. I mean, are the 4 lines all penciled in? I don't know if they have a roster that they're comfortable saying this is our roster yet. I mean, they've been talking about in the last couple months, Adam Dennis has been talking about, it's going to be the most competitive training camp the team's ever had because, so many guys have a great opportunity to impress them. So, I think people have to be patient as the coaches, sort of fine tune their team, and they've got a little extra time with the long training camp, but It's not a great example in preseason games. So it's going to be interesting how competitive this camp is as the coaches figure out who's going to be, who's going to be playing with who.
I also think that the way they did the lottery draft this year might have accelerated some other teams thinking in terms of, I'm just looking at a team like Sudbury, who probably thought they were going to have a rebuild year after losing Quinton Byfield, and then they go and get Quinton Musty. And I think that is going to be very intriguing to add to the overall rivalry between the Battalion and the Wolves, considering that North Bay got the first overall pick from the 2020 draft, and then the Wolves got the first pick from the 2021 draft, right? So seeing those two guys compete against each other for the next 3-4 years, I think that has a lot of intrigue for fans in the northern part of the province. But then Oshawa getting the second pick in Callum Ritchie. I mean, Oshawa wasn't a team that necessarily needed to finish high in the draft lottery. You know what I mean? They were on a nice trajectory too. So I think that that's where it comes in, where the lockout might have, or the lockdown of the season will kind of dictate where teams find themselves as we go on this what's sure to be a wild journey this year.
I think very minimal Western Conference games too. I think the only ones are against the Sioux. And that means you're seeing a lot of, it's basically playoff series with these teams, mini ones. And it's a way to test yourself. When we were talking to head coach Ryan Houlihan, he was saying he expects this team, and probably every other one, when they hit the ice those first few weeks, they're going to be shot out of a shotgun, just bam, full on, giving it everything they got, kind of like it's all pent up, and they just want to get that right out there and show everybody what they were missing.
Well, you guys have done all the Sudbury games, the Niagara games, the Barrie games. There's more of them this year.
Yeah, if there's
like
such a thing.
62 of their games are against teams in their own conference, and I don't think there's extra games against the other division. So all the extra games are, except maybe 2 against the Sioux. But in terms of the extra games, because you're not playing Western teams, they're all against teams in your own division. So there may be some, shall we say, long nights for the officials in some of these games, because when you're seeing a team 11, 12 times, you're going to get to know that opposite number pretty well, and to be sick of them by Christmas maybe. So
I think
some interesting fireworks.
Yeah.
I think Matt's just happy he doesn't have to go to Barrie 12 times in a year.
Yeah.
It's always the worst part. The shortest trips are always the longest.
They really are.
That's right.
They really are. Yeah. No, it's funny. Sometimes Barrie could be fun. I mean, when the cops aren't showing up, but because you're so close to the fans, like, literally you can high five them.
You grab the tops of their head.
Yes,
that's right.
If you wanted to.
And they can high five you.
Yeah. When you had some of the kids from Southern Ontario on the Battalion, their parents would make the trip to Barrie, and some of them would come and sit in that section and listen to us do the play-by-play. So that was always more fun when you saw some green shirts just below your eye level as opposed to some blue ones. So
I think that Barrie, like, I know Sudbury geographically is there, but there really hasn't been a year where both teams have played really well, right?
Except for the first, yeah.
They played really well, and then Sudbury was down, and last few years, Sudbury's been better than North Bay. But Barrie and North Bay often have been on the same, they've been competing in playoffs. They've been competing in, for the division title along with Niagara. So it's almost been, ever since the Battalion got here, it's almost been 1-1A as to who their biggest rivalry is.
Yep.
And, the Barrie games there have been some beauties, both regular season and post. And, it's going to be interesting with more matchups coming up.
You know, I will say there was the one year though, when they played Niagara in the playoffs leading up to that series. I would have put Niagara as their biggest rival that season when they went out and made all their trades and whatnot and had like I can't think of the guys.
Jason Robertson.
Jason Robertson was one of them. Yeah, I don't know why I wanted to say Cliff Poo, but that was the year before with Kingston.
Yeah.
But because I remember standing between the benches and just the verbal sparring that would go on between the two benches, you know, Brad Chenier going at basically everybody on their bench and whatnot. So I would almost say that 1 year, the rivalry was definitely the one with Niagara, especially come playoff time. But yeah, to your point, Bob, I think the only year that the Battalion and Sudbury have both been good was that first year when they were duking it out for the division crown, you know, going to Sudbury and clinching that, which was great, especially for North Bay fans. You know, I don't think Sudbury fans were too happy leaving the arena that night, but hey, whatever.
And Barrie was very competitive that year as well. I mean, they ended up knocking out Sudbury before North Bay knocked them out in round 2. So yeah, that was a good central division in the first year that the Battalion were here.
Yeah, it was. And the thing that was crazy about it was out of the 3 teams going into the season, I don't think nobody would have picked the Battalion to come out of there with the division crown that season. They would have been,
true.
Barrie has the potential first overall pick and Aaron Ekblad, and, you know, Sudbury's loaded up pretty high, you know, and then North Bay just comes in and is like, well, we're just going to take this. Thank you.
And what's interesting is that the year before it was Sudbury knocking Brampton out of the playoffs in their final game in Brampton. So you thought, okay, this is awesome. This is going to carry over. And, you know, we have the geographic rivalry now, and it really hasn't. I mean, the games do get heated up, but we're still waiting for that one really big series between North Bay and Sudbury.
Yeah. And that's when you get it, right? The regular season games are, you know, the crowd might get into it in the various cities, but you need that sort of night after night after night of intense games. Fans in both communities get into it, and I think this could be the year that North Bay and Sudbury are both have strong teams. So you know, it's hopefully they do somehow get together in the playoffs. That'd be a great way to welcome the OHL back this year for sure.
Well, I've heard that speaking of the matchup of what will be Sudbury and North Bay this year, I've heard Ty Nelson's pretty amped to get going, but he's really amped to go up against Musty. So that'll be a fun time. Just as, you know, you guys were.
I don't think he's ever not amped for anything, though.
No, he's always in a good mood.
I feel like switching on the light for him, no pun intended, gets him amped. So
yeah, gets very excited the second the light gets turned on. Let's go, basically.
I'm trying to think of a guy about Ty Nelson, though. You mentioned Ty Nelson. Think of a guy who hasn't played a game for North Bay, yet, you know, we feel like we know him really well, right? In terms of his personality, you guys, I've interviewed him once, but you guys have interviewed him a lot more, I'm sure. And he's just done such a great job of you know, going on Twitter and talking about the Battalion and welcoming.
Well, him and Wakely.
Guys they just drafted. I mean, he's done a real good job about being a team leader, I think. And we got to remember, he hasn't played an OHL game yet. And I'm sure he's chomping at the bit, as you say, Tom.
Well, pure speculation, but, you know, we asked Coach Houlihan again the leadership question, because of course they're going to have a whole new leadership core this year, because everyone that was here, well, we still need to figure out what's happening with Primo and Co. But everyone that was here, you know, Moncada and whatnot, and Grima and everybody, they've gone on to other things because they've aged out. But I wouldn't be shocked if Nelson's in the talks for wearing a letter, you know. Yeah, I mean, it might be a little tough. It is his rookie season, but everything that I've seen of him is exuded leadership. And I mean, even talking to all the draft picks so far, I mean, Mathurin, Wakely, DeVincentis, Owen Van Steensel, even the guys from this year, Romani, Outwater, Sema, all of them are, you can tell personality wise in these interviews that Adam Dennis is conducting with them. He's looking for a specific type of person that's not just a great player, but a good person off the ice. And that's the vibe that I get from just talking to these kids, because they're willing to give you all the time in the world. They're wanting to talk to you. They're not just, okay, ask me about this and, you know, give the generic pucks in deep, got to stick to the game plan type of answers, but they're very talkative kids and they're very smart.
In the last 2 to 3 years now, I've noticed that the kids coming in right away are a lot more polished on the media side than in years past. I don't know if it's just, like you said, just the personality of these kids that Adam Dennis and company are finding, or whether it's maybe it's a social media thing and these guys are just used to talking to
Maybe,
us
yeah.
media types. But yeah, they're a lot more polished, I've noticed, over the last couple of years.
Well, I remember talking to Adam and he was saying that, they look for that before they pick, they look for a guy who's a leader on his team in terms of his, on the ice, but also off the ice. Because you're going to go through stretches where you're not playing well. Maybe you're not, a score's on a slump, or the team's lost a couple in a row, and you need those guys to sort of not get down on themselves, to stay with it, especially at that age. They're just, 16, 17, 18, and 3 games can seem like a month, right? So you need those guys that have been sort of leaders on their own midget teams, etc. And that was a big ingredient into who they drafted and why they drafted them. So I think they have a few leaders. I don't think leadership's going to be an issue with this team. I think it's just finding balance and chemistry and all the things, because like they've never played together. It's going to, usually you get 5 or 6 guys who haven't played together. You could have 13 guys on this team who haven't played together, and depending what happens in training camp. So, that sort of leadership is going to be important. I think this year, maybe more than any other year.
I think that's going to be a huge learning curve for Ryan Olahan and Scott Ray and Bill Holder this year behind the bench, is just figuring out who can actually play together, because usually when you have a rookie group come in, there's some lineup shuffling with your third and fourth lines, and maybe a guy on line 3 gets moved up to line 2, and then usually line 1 is your older group, or maybe it is that first round draft pick who is going to fit in well with that older group. This year it's just I have no idea how they're going to assess it. I think it's going to be a game to game thing, and I don't know how many roles they already have reserved for certain guys. I mean, you could probably look at the roster and go, all right, here is arguably your top 6 forwards, and here's your top 4 D guys. But like I said before, I think there's these 2 classes of rookies that are going, hey, I'm coming in and I've got something to prove, and I'm not going to let that second or third year guy just have that spot just because they may have been there before.
Yeah.
I'm anxious to see how it all shapes out. Of course, it's going to be fun. When it comes to leadership, I'm just wondering, fellas, any names come up? Let's say everybody comes back who's supposed to come back. Do you have a name or two who you would sow the sea onto?
Arnsby strikes me as being near the top in terms of the leadership over the next couple of years. I think he plays that game with that, you don't notice him right away, but he's willing to go, and what do they call it? The tough areas of the ice. He doesn't mind getting under an opponent's skin. That's sort of like what you need from your, unless you have a guy like Brazo or something who just blows you away with his offense. I think, you need that guy who's willing to, get his nose dirty and just say, just follow me, boys. And I think Arnsby's the guy on that team that it's really going to be interesting to watch him this year. Obviously, he didn't play last year, and he was just starting to show some signs, I think, late in that first year. And, for me, he's the guy to watch, I think, as a future captain of this team, just because of his attitude and the way he plays the game.
My obvious go-to is Brandon Coe. He'd be coming back as an overage guy. He'd be coming back as a guy who's been to an NHL camp now. He's a guy who has steadily improved year over year. I think he came in with a lot of expectations on his shoulder, being a third overall pick. And I think that he has at least garnered the reputation of being a guy that can lead a team when he knows that that's his role. I think because he's always been one of the younger guys, and they've had those leaders in the locker room before. Maybe he hasn't had that opportunity to step up into that role. So I think that might be the obvious choice, just because he is going to be one of the most tenured players there. But then saying that, I can also see a guy like Simon Rose come in and get the C as being, the oldest guy on the blue line there. Simon Rose actually reminds me of a lot of Mike Amadio personality wise, just in terms of like, he didn't do a lot to get the headlines every night, but you were really thankful he was there. And then the year, and then all of a sudden, like almost out of nowhere, he goes and scores 50 goals. So I mean, I'm not saying I don't think Simon Rose is going to score 50 goals, but like when he goes out and just does his job every night, does what he's asked. And then, there are moments of brilliance where he does steal the headlines. There was a game, can't remember who it was against, but it was in overtime. He got a little chip off the boards, went around a guy, and came in and scored on a breakaway in an overtime game-winning goal. I mean, those are just the moments of brilliance on offense that you see from Simon Rose. And I think that he's another guy that's really steadily improved year over year. I mean, in his first season, he was a healthy scratch when the Battalion were in the playoffs. And then the next year, he was one of the best defensemen when he was healthy. So he's a guy that I'm throwing my hat on, saying I could see him getting a C.
Think about 2 years ago, this time 2 years ago. Who was the captain?
Brad Chenier.
Chenier, right? They traded him that year, and Luc Moncada became Luc Moncada, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's how long it's been. So they may not name a captain right away. They may wait and see, at some point. That's what I mean. It's been back up Matt, what he said earlier. It's been so long. Like, the coaches have a really hard job this year. They have to figure out what type of team they have, who their leaders are, what kind of leader they want. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to follow this year for sure.
Would it be out of place or would you think guys maybe be offended if someone like Ty Nelson, even though he's never played a game, he's going to be the captain of the team one year? That's just what's going to happen. But do you think maybe they say, let's try it? They've done it. They've done it in the Sioux twice with Hayton and O'Rourke. Give it to really young guys.
I wouldn't be shocked if we did see a captain that has more than 1 year left, because we've only seen that once with Bruce. Bruce had the captaincy for 2 years, whereas most of the other guys were overagers or whatever. I was just going to say, I wouldn't be shocked with either Coe or Rose, like what Matt said. But if I was put a gun to my head and someone says your life depends on who's going to be the captain of the North Bay Battalion, which is such a far-fetched idea. But I do have to go with Bob's point of Liam Arnsby. That said, I'm not shocked if Nelson gets a letter on his chest this year. I'm not shocked if he is named. Well, it'd be nice. Either or, it's something that we haven't been able to debate in a while, and it's nice that we can debate this right now. So I have to go with Arnsby, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's Nelson. I don't know if you gentlemen concur or whichever, but yeah.
A hockey coach told me in the OHL, I asked him, it wasn't a North Bay coach, it was from another team. And I said to him, why do you pick a certain guy captain and why don't you pick another guy? And he says, the captain's got to do two jobs. He's he's going to carry the message the coaches want delivered to the players. And he's also going to be willing to, just be that guy in the room that players can go to. That players can go to if they have an issue, whether it's at school, whether it's at home, whether it's missing their parents, missing their dog back home, the way they're being used by the coach, ice time, what anything comes up at this age. And so the choice you make says a lot about this player, and it also says a lot about your organization and what kind of team you want. So, they got a lot of choices. I mean, we've just been, we came up with 8 guys here. So we have a lot of choices, and that goes back to, Adam Dennis picking a lot of leaders. He's got a lot of leaders on this team and a lot of choices to pick. And like I said, you may not name a captain till,
Christmas.
Till Christmas. Who knows?
Well, yeah, that's the popular adage of years past is there's no rookies after Christmas, right? So if you wait.
I was going to say, if this was 2 years ago, no chance Ty Nelson would be the captain out of training camp. Under this new regime, though, yeah, I can see that lining up perfectly with what they're trying to build here.
Think about it. You're already marketing this kid because he's the 2021st overall pick. People are already excited to see him. How exciting would it be now to be like, not only is the 2021st overall pick, but he's the captain of the new look North Bay Battalion, right? So marketing wise, maybe I should be in marketing. I don't know. But marketing, he looks, don't pick me for marketing.
Put it on your resume. I had one good idea once.
Yeah. Please hire me.
You'll have to give me the job to hear it.
Yes. This idea, it requires me having a job. Thank you.
And well, if he picks, if he did it, he would have to obviously have the support of the veterans on the team, right?
Yes. Yes.
And the guys who are older than him, who have more experience, and and that's a lot of pressure to put on him too. First year, maybe you give him an A, I don't know, but I think that would be a lot for a kid to handle. And I know he's good, and I know he's talented, and he's going to go places in the game. But you don't want to. I don't think you want to put that much pressure on him before he's played a game. But that's my view.
Yeah, it's definitely something I personally wouldn't want. But I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, yeah, when you think about how things have gone since in the last 2 years for the team, it's definitely a possibility on the table. And you know what? They're probably Uli or Denny's probably listening to this right now, being like, "These guys are stupid," like
we already got it figured out, idiots.
Yeah,
yeah. I hope that's not the case.
It's gonna be somebody completely out of left fielder who's not even on the team right this second.
Way off.
Yeah, they make a trade for somebody, and it's like, like.
Well, I was gonna bring that up. I know I'm not the one supposed to be asking questions, but how much?
You can ask. Go ahead.
How much actual movement do you think there's going to be, not maybe just with the battalion, but in the OHL overall? Because I feel like a lot of teams are just going to go, we want to try out these 18 picks that we've accumulated over the last 2 years. I don't think there's going to be a ton of movement, but that's just my guess.
If there is movement, it's going to be like deadline day, maybe. That's my best guess.
I wouldn't be shocked if there's some guys who were maybe fringe players in 2019, 2020 that were maybe, bottom 6 or something that would have moved up, but now you want to give it to these rookies. Because if you think about it, some of those guys, the 16, 17-year-olds are now 18, 19. And I wouldn't be shocked if there's some teams that are looking at it like, yeah, we have these guys, but we don't have a spot for them. And some other teams like, well, that's a problem that I'm willing to take, or a gamble I'm willing to take. I wouldn't be shocked if there's some of that right off the hop. But it's going to be interesting. Deadline day might not even be busy because everyone's happy with all these 2 classes of rookies. Who knows?
It might be one of the closest years we have standing wise in a long time. Finally,
teams don't know what. Yeah, it's like we've been saying. Teams don't know where they are. They just don't know, and you got to figure. I don't know if they're accounting for that with the trade deadline date or not, but there will be teams that think they can win it all, and They'll have a pretty good idea probably after the 40 game mark,
Well,
where they are. And those teams will be busy. There are always 4 or 5 teams really busy and 4 or 5 teams. But if you got a lot of young players, those 4 or 5 teams which usually acquire draft picks, they may not be busy, right? Not be busy. So there could, because, we've got enough draft picks to figure out this year.
And that's what I mean when you look at the playing time with them. In years past with the Battalion, Stan Butler usually did something pretty early on that involved his overage situation. I think of
Brent Moran.
Guys like Brent Moran, Ben Thompson, Theo Calvis, right? Those were Cole Cameron. Those were early in the season moves, just to kind of and good moves too on Stan's part, just to kind of bring in some veteran leadership and kind of try to smooth out that ride for the younger guys and have someone he could trust with more playing time. But now on the flip side, it's kind of like I said before, I think there's so many teams that are going to just want to give those inexperienced players as much playing time as they can right off the bat to see exactly what they have.
Well, in the past, there was a lot of sheltered minutes on defense, on the 4th line, sometimes even as a 13th forward and 7th defenseman. A guy like Ty Nelson in his first year would have probably been 3rd pairing, 2nd power play, and maybe get 15 minutes on a good night. But now he's in your top 4, no questions asked. He's going to be on that top unit. He's going to be playing probably against the best guys if Rose and Winslow aren't. So like we were talking to Uli, he just said, we can plan all we want. And in 1 hour, you just throw away the papers and have to start again. And that's probably going to happen so often.
Well, I remember, I was about to say last year, in 2019, 2020, Liam Arsby was on the first line on his first game. And I walked into the media room. I saw that on the board in the media room. And I turned to Bob and Courtney. I said, you won't be there by the end of the weekend. Just because you just know that's not how this team was ever really built, right? And by the next Thursday night home game of that year, he was on the 3rd line. And
a guy like Matvei Petrov is not playing on the 3rd or 4th line.
Yeah.
The league's changed a lot, though. The league's changed. The old way was, if you don't prove yourself, we're not going to put you into tough situations against bigger, more experienced players. But if we put you on the 4th line and you fail, we're going to bench you for 4 games. That doesn't happen anymore.
No.
Players through by making mistakes, playing against players from their own year, but they're more patient, right? So, and I think that's a good thing, because mental health is definitely part of the league now. It's part of the game, and benching a 16-year-old kid because he was on the ice for 2 goals, it's not good for his mental health. So, but I think that's changed. The coaches tend to be younger now, and they understand that. And so I think you'll see these guys get ice time, and they'll get opportunities, and the coaches will throw them out there in all kinds of situations. I think that's what fans want to see. Fans want to see these kids you drafted and put them out in different situations. And I think they have the right coaches to do that.
Draft day comes and you hear all this good stuff about all these players, even the guys that won't even make the team ever. Everyone's singing their praises. And then in years past, you never saw those players. This year, and with the feeling around this team is you are going to see these players. You are actually going to sit here and be like, oh, I remember when, Adam was talking about Dominic DiVincentis, and now he's, playing. So he's played 3 games in a row or something or whatever.
Well, geez, we've already met them. We've talked to kids we would never have even seen or even made eye contact at the rink with before.
Hmm.
Like it's
No,
just
it's
it's
true.
such a different it's such a different attitude around them. It's like they want them to just be normal humans who happen to be really good at hockey.
I also think part of that now comes in with, you realize how many injuries there are throughout the year. Guys get sick and don't feel well, or on the positive side, guys are called away to go play at Team Canada type tournaments or whatever. And so I think there's that feeling of, we need to have a pretty deep depth chart, because we're expecting guys to maybe miss time because of the good things, or the bumps and bruises that are going to happen over this season, and
Yep.
we want the guys that we call in to not be missing a step. So we want, it's hard to replace the experience and the talent caliber of guys that are playing in the OHL compared to guys that might be playing in the NOJHL or in junior A somewhere. But I think what the Battalion have done is built that community of drafting players that they think will be able to step up and step in and assist the team in whatever way they're asked to.
Well, to your point on that, and I know for the past year and a bit, I've been drinking the Kool-Aid very, very heavily when it comes to the Battalion, about how excited I am about these players, about how excited I am for the OHL to come back. But I was at the Voodoo's little orientation camp that they had about almost a month ago now, which is insane to think about, that August has just flown by. And they had Chase McQueen Spence out there because he'll be playing with the Voodoos this year. And his team that he was on, it was a green and white game scrimmage. His team was getting manhandled. There was no way, like, they were not playing anything. Like, they could not get anything going. But Chase McQueen Spence every single time got the puck, and he would just get through everybody and get up all through the ice. And I'm like, wow, this kid was like a 4th round pick in the 2020 draft. He's already earmarked for Powassan. And you mean to tell me that the other players are just as good, if not better, that are coming? Like, that's scary. That's scary,
It really is.
and it's
It's
exciting.
awesome.
Yeah, it's exciting.
To that point, gentlemen, we talked about fostering a community not only of positivity and great mental health, but with the players themselves. How important is it to have the Voodoos back on their side again? Just down the road, if they need that depth, they know where to find it.
Well, I think it's great because it works both ways, right? They get to play, and they're not far from North Bay. So if there are injuries, they can step right in, and the coaches get to see them, and they can work with the Voodoo's coaches and say, we really want to focus on, this is sort of our role. So this is what he should be focusing on. These are his 3 or 4 things. And they can go there on a Friday night or a Saturday night, right? The coaches. Scott Ray can go and check them out, or Bill Holder, whatever, and report. Video is one thing. You see that on video, but to see them in person, you see them, what are they doing on the ice when they don't have the puck? How are they going, their shift? If you're a defenseman, how are you covering positionally? How are you covering that power forward down the wing? I mean, I think it's great. I think, and fans of the Voodoos can see, future Battalion players, and you always get a story, right? You always get a story of a guy who gets to play in Powassan, probably didn't have a chance in North Bay, but he finds a way onto an OHL team because, he's just noticeable out there. So, it's I think it's a great thing.
I do too. I think it's also just a nice sense of building that regional community as well. When the Voodoos won that NOJHL championship a couple of years ago, there was reason to celebrate in North Bay as well, right? It's just, those are the next Battalion players, and look at all the success that they're having, and hopefully it turns into success at the next level. So I'm very happy to see that the partnership has been renewed.
I'm very biased, so I can't really answer that question. No, I think it's great that the Voodoo's are back in the battalion and whatnot, especially like Bob mentioned. Scott Ray's very familiar with the organization. Coaching there the first 3 years of existence. So they have that connection. Of course, Adam was part of the main reason why the connection was reestablished, and Chris Dawson covering the team as the general manager and everything too. He covers the battalion for Bay today, so it's just kind of all interwoven, and I think it's great. And like I said, if Chase McQueen Spence is the least talented, and I say that with paraphrase, like very loosely, the least out of all the draft picks that we've seen, we've got some exciting players coming our way in North Bay. So it's a very exciting time right now. One thing I did want to bring up though, just because we were on the topic of trades, two things. The battalion have a very deep cupboard of draft picks.
Yeah.
If they ever want to make a deal. So that's gonna be fun to watch. And not only that, but when we had David Branch on, he was talking about how, and then with the season schedule coming out, he was talking about how it's going to be about a 40-60 split of the season between Christmas and the rest of the year. So you're going to get more than half the season with these trade deadline acquisition guys. Like,
oh yeah,
as opposed to previous years where, I mean, you still had like 2 months with these players still, but you're going to get almost 50% of the season with your big fish that you land at the deadline.
And the battalion's home schedule is mostly backloaded. Like, what was it, like 10 or 11 home games before Christmas, something like that, Courtney?
Yeah, and then
we saw like maybe 12, I think, or 13.
Yeah.
And then after that, they're on the road most of the first half of the year.
And then
February
they're
home.
Yeah, February's just home, pretty much. So,
the schedule's favorable for them for the first time ever.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think anytime you don't have to go all the way down to Erie or Flint, the schedule favors you. So just gotta put that out there.
You're not doing those crazy trips, right?
Yeah, I think though on the trade front, I like that you get the players for longer. I think the downside is you have a longer time to mess it up. You know what I mean? Like the moves that you make have to be right, because that you don't have another shot to improve or address your areas of need. So I think it's super interesting considering with it being the 40-60 split, can you gauge what your first and second year players really are in that amount of time, and then judge what you need to assist them, and judge where you are. Like, our team's going to load up with that much time left and sell off or give up on some of their younger guys in the hopes that, well, we're in first place now, but we still have 60% of the season left to go. Like, that's wild. I can see a lot of GMs being a little more hesitant and just making depth type moves at that point.
The other thing
that's when mistakes get made, though. You overreact or you overreact way too early.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you get rid of a guy because he's not producing, and then next year sometime he becomes an elite goal scorer, right? And that happens. But I think GMs, sort of are going to have to remind themselves to be a little more patient this year than other years, because, it's just going to take longer. Players haven't played together and they haven't played in a year. I mean, it's just an unusual time.
Well, the other thing that's tough about the whole 40-60 split with the trade deadline still remaining where it is like Matt said, there's more of a chance that you can mess it up. Or say you're the battalion and you have a better home schedule in the back half of the season, and your team's tired and in road warriors and everything, and they're not playing great because of that. Now you look at your team and you say, well, maybe it's time to sell at the deadline. And then all of a sudden in February, you catch fire because you're playing at home for most of the month, like it's a weird dynamic.
Well, that's what happened. My my last year there. When they traded Cam Dineen, and they went on a tear and made the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And it did, hooray. But, that's, you hope they make the playoffs. But yeah, you don't want that kind of situation to kind of happen again, where if you're going to sell off and all of a sudden that's the spark they needed or something. I don't know.
Well,
They played a playoff game in Sudbury.
Was that the year?
Remind me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be the year.
That was a dumpster
One home
fire.
playoff game that whole year.
And I did an interview on Kojiko with Daniel Walker, but kept calling him Luke.
Burkhardt?
What's that?
Luke Burkhardt?
Burkhardt, thank you. I knew it started with a B. Yeah. Sorry. Initial
It kinda
interview was
looked a
supposed to
little-
be with Luke Burkhardt. Daniel Walker skates over, and like he came over as I was going on the air. I turned, I'm like, "You're ready?" He's like, "Yeah," and we went. And I'm just like, "I'm here with Luke Burkhardt."
Oh no.
Did the whole interview, and then as he skated away, I see Walker on the back of his shirt, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!"
Was that in Sudbury?
It was in Sudbury.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And he didn't
I
correct
blame,
you.
I blame the arena.
As most people do.
And he didn't correct you at all.
No, and he just went with it, and he thought it was hilarious. Because then the next game, I'm down there getting my prep ready, and Luke walks out, and he's like, "So I heard what happened." I was like, "Yeah, man, thanks for not showing up." Ha ha ha.
What did he say about it? That's funny.
He was like, "Yeah, sorry, I completely forgot." And yeah, like it was we laughed about it, but yeah, it was funny. And Daniel Walker just played it off as like what was he gonna say? Actually, Matt, I'm Daniel Walker, and I'm actually gonna embarrass you on live TV. Like,
Well, if there's someone to play along with it, it's definitely Daniel Walker. That's so
Yeah.
good. That's so good. Weirdest thing ever. I remember for whatever reason doing a Battalion road game, and I had a copy of the hockey news. Like I was in the studio and I had a copy of the hockey news, and during the period I was just leafing through it, and they had the section Jersey Hound, right, where it's like, oh, here's some really cool jerseys that you don't see often, and they had the Centennials jersey, and it was Daniel Walker wearing the Centennials jersey, and it's like Daniel Walker made the hockey news. Like,
that's very cool.
yeah, it's kind
Speaking
of
of, I just wanted to give a plug for Jim Midgley.
yes.
Played for the Centennials. Going to be an assistant coach for the New York Rangers.
Yes.
Scout
Saw that
last
today.
for the Flyers, and Mike Kelly, former Centennials head man. Of course, he's worked with Gerard Gallant in Vegas,
Hmm.
and he's the new coach of the Rangers. So a couple of North Bay angles to the New York Rangers this season. So
And Barclay Goodrow.
I wish them well, except when they play the Flyers. Not that well.
Well, that'll be an interesting one, because the Flyers have transformed themselves this offseason, and the Rangers are up and coming too, right? So it's gonna be an interesting rivalry there between the two
For
teams.
sure.
Did anyone think that when you're watching Barclay Goodrow at Memorial Gardens, you're going, that guy's gonna win 2 Stanley Cups?
And get paid.
No one ever said.
Geez, Louise.
No
You
one
know
ever
what?
said
Talk about
he's going to win back-to-back Stanley Cups and sign a huge contract with the New York Rangers.
But good for him.
yeah,
Oh,
no, I can't think of anyone that deserves it more. Like that guy, yeah, he put the work in. He deserves everything that he's gotten.
I know he's not making superstar money, but he's getting paid insanely well for a long
doing
time,
okay.
NHL wise. And I mean, this is a guy nobody even gave 2 thoughts about until San Jose signed him. And
Right.
But
I
he
mean,
deserves it.
it's an inspiration for guys who
Mhm.
don't get drafted, who say, you know what, you can still put in the work
Sure.
and be a champion twice in a row.
You know, signs a deal, spends
He got traded for a first round
with
pick
the
for crying out loud.
Barracudas, right?
That's right.
Well, the
He
thing,
He proves himself so much with the Barracudas. He gets called up. It's a huge, like if he doesn't score in game 7 in overtime, I don't know if he gets traded to Tampa.
Yeah, against Vegas there.
You
Well,
know,
even
I mean, it's
that-
just, yeah.
Well,
But
not
after
only
his-
that, but if the ref didn't blow that call on Pavelski, would Barclay Goodrow have gotten that chance?
Well, even after his first year in the league, what did he play, like 62 games, and then got sent down for most of the next
Yeah.
year with the
Yeah.
Barracuda, and then came back, and then
Yeah.
was sporadic for a while.
And some
Yeah,
guys
he was a
never get
real-
that chance again. I mean, you talk to our good friend Greg DeBerge with the Cogeco broadcasting side, right? He tells you stories all the time of guys that came up, looked like they had potential, and then ownership change or management change, and they
Yeah.
just don't even pay attention to this guy. They get sent down and they just get buried.
Yeah.
And just, for whatever reason, Barclay just stayed on the good side, stayed on people's radars, and now Tampa Bay has two parades to thank him for. So
Yeah, he was the leader on that team that the only year he played in North Bay. He was the leader of that team. There was no doubt about who the leader of that team was. You know, it was him. It was him, like his performances at home, his shorthanded goals, his just leadership on the road trips. You could just, whatever Barkley wanted to do, the rest of the team just followed. He was an impressive, and that's what a leader can do. That's what a captain can do.
Yep.
He was all that.
now he gets to call Madison Square Garden his home. Like
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
So my family dinners are super exciting. Because everyone always ends up
Oh,
asking
good.
me-
All right. Good show, guys.
So here's some family gossip. No, anyways. So Christmas dinner, about a year or two ago, I'm at my dad's and he starts asking, "Oh, who's the best Battalion player you've seen come through North Bay?" And I said, "Well, you have to break it down to two categories." I was like, offensively, Justin Brazeau, hands down, best player we've seen come through here. Leadership and guy that you needed a clutch goal, Barclay Goodrow. You can't. I think it's 1A, 1B when you talk about the two best players that have ever come through North Bay since the team moved here. It starts and ends. The conversation starts and ends with those two guys.
I don't know. Jake Smith got to be up there.
Well, he's a 1C. So, so I'm covering all my bases here, but when it comes to forwards, Barclay Goodrow, you can't bet against the guy. You needed a goal in the last minute of the game. Well, I always go back to a game against Owen Sound earlier in the season, and it was like 1-0 Owen Sound the entire game, and then the highlights still on YouTube. Barclay Goodrow literally carries an Owen Sound player on his back from his own offensive zone and just goes down and just wrists it right over the goalie's glove in his tie game. The Battalion go on to win that game in a shootout. Barclay Goodrow getting like the shootout winner or one of the shootout goals. Like, it's just like the intuitiveness. He's the David Ortiz of the North Bay Battalion, where David Ortiz always knew how to come up in the clutch situations.
The thing that I remember about Goodrow when he played here, though, was they were more dangerous, and Matt remembers this too, shorthanded
Yes.
Oh yeah.
when to the other team who had the power play.
Yep.
Even when they had a two-man advantage,
Yep.
they were just so nervous because he had this habit of, he wouldn't rush the point right away when you expected him to, right? So the defenseman or the guy at the point would relax. And that's when Goodrow with his speed he'd be on you like, so fast. And before long, it'd be a 2-on-0 or a 2-on-1 or a 1-on-0. And like, he was so dangerous killing penalties that year.
Yep. I remember sitting in the stands and watching games as a fan then, and producer of our show, Ben Sargent, sitting next to me. And every time the Battalion would go on the penalty kill, he'd be like, "Silly opposing team, now you've just played into our hand," type of thing. Like, but then if we went on the power play, if the Battalion went on the power play, Ben's like, "Well, here's 2 minutes of not scoring," but like
That was the weird thing, right? The power play seemed a little inept, but then the penalty kill was okay. We got them where we want them.
Yeah.
They went 5 forwards. They went 4-1.
Yeah, and
Two.
we would joke about it going, now can the other team defer their power play and just not
Penalty
take
declined.
the decline? Yeah.
We decline our foul.
We'll just take the goal and call it a day.
Yeah, just
The
put a
impressive
goal up
thing
there.
to me was that like he would block the shots and then pick up the rebound off his block and then take off.
Yeah, so we got the breakaway.
Like,
But remember, the big knock on him was, oh, Barclay Goodrow can't skate. He's not a good skater. But then, what are you talking about? Like, I guess that's what separates me from a pro scout. But all those pro scouts that passed him over in 2 straight drafts are obviously wrong because the guy has 2 more cup rings than most of them. So, and probably more money than most of them as well. So, good for Barclay Goodrow. I'm just gonna throw haymakers at those scouts all day, and then they're gonna come and talk to me in the media rooms one of these days. But I did want to shift. One of the last things I wanted to bring up with you guys, though, and Tom and I talked about this in the last one. It's a bit of a serious subject, but the new OHL implementation of you need to be fully vaccinated to get into a game. Just your thoughts, guys, on the OHL putting that rule in place.
I love it. I love it. Like, you know, the world we live in now is, you know, you have the opportunity to get vaccinated, to get 2 shots, and you can go to, it's just not hockey games, you can go to rock concerts, you can, you know, go anywhere really. You know, but if you don't get vaccinated, you know, you can make someone else sick. And, you know, and it's tough for the battalion and all OHL teams because, you know, they want to organize their seating. They want 1,000 people in the building, but they have to organize their seating, but they really can't do it because you don't know if the guy across from you is, you know, has been vaccinated or not, right? So by, you know, just bringing your phone, showing your email that you've been vaccinated twice, it helps the team run their business, but it just makes sense. Like, you know, you don't want to make someone else sick. And, you know, I think the ball started with the Leafs and the Canucks and the Jets when they were doing it. I think I'm glad the OHL got on board, and it just shows you got to work with the health authorities. And I like it. I think it's great. And you know, I'm sure some people might be upset, but you know, if you want to see them play, you're going to have to get vaccinated. I don't mind that.
I think we're very fortunate that we live in a time where we can find a solution to a problem relatively quickly and have the data to show that this is what is the best course of action, and then also have a lot of the decision makers inside society agree with it and say, this is what we have to do. That's going to be best for our business, best for our employees. And you know, especially when you've got kids playing out there on the ice, you need to protect them in any which way you can. And this is another layer of protection for these kids. I think it would be a really bad look if you were forcing teenagers to go play on an ice surface and, you know, and have the potential of people being there potentially spreading this virus around, right? That, I don't know how well that would sit with me. So yeah, I'm in complete agreement with it. Yeah, we are very fortunate to have the science that we have available to us in 2021.
Well, not only that, but I mentioned this to Tom, but you and Tom would both know, and Bob, like, if it gets in that locker room, it's spreading like wildfire, you know? Even
like the bus, the locker room,
even the hotels.
It's, you get it one place, it's coming with you somewhere else. And it's not even a question of like if, it's just how bad or how much.
Yeah.
Someone told you that, you know, your 5-year-old can't go to school because, you know, they could, unless they get a vaccine for diphtheria, you'd get the vaccine.
Yeah.
Going on for 15, 20 years that you have to get, or measles or rubella. You know, you'd say, I got to get my child vaccinated, right? So me, it's the same thing.
And if I'm looking at it as a parent, if I'm looking at it as a parent who's sending their kid to play in the OHL, like I think I am very happy that the OHL implements this rule. Again, just another layer of protecting the players.
Sure. And not only players, officials, and
officials too,
coaches, and
Heck, us even.
Well, no one really cares about us, but I'm glad
It's
we're
true.
Tom, come on.
That fourth seat on the bus was never more disposable. Just saying. Fourth seat on the right. Anyway, fellas,
you're not
listen,
wrong.
we got to say a huge thank you again for having you both on the show. We really, really, really appreciate it, because whenever you guys come on, we usually do the long ones, and I like a good long one. So,
Oh, my
gentlemen,
pleasure.
thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's great to chat with you guys. Yeah, I'm excited. It's like Courtney said at the beginning, it's starting to get real. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the training camp, and you know, just to the interest. I've never looked this forward to an interest game in my life. But that's it's going to be fun, and just watch as they compete and battle, and then the preseason games and the regular season opener. So great to see you guys, and I guess we'll see you at the rink.
Yes, very soon. You know what I miss the most is that very long elevator ride from like the first floor to the third floor. I'm
It
excited
is a
for
long
that.
ride.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
As always, a huge thank you to Matt Sookram and Bob Coles, who are easily some of our favorite guests, and we're always default friends of the show. Love those guys, and can't wait to hear more of their insight as the season goes along. All right. I'm Tom Parisi. He's Courtney Kenny. Our producer is Ben Sargent, who doesn't believe in the Battalion power play. So when you see him, you can hold it against him. If you're watching this on Kojiko, you can listen to our your TV. You can listen to us and see it all live on YouTube. Hear us on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcast, and be sure to tune in anytime the Battalion do anything on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. We're there alongside. All right, this was the Frontline Podcast, and this was a lot of fun too. We're going to do it again sometime.